One's sexual orientation contaminates no one. Risky conducts do. Hello, my name is Tainá. I'm a PhD in law and I'm currently a postdoc researcher in human rights. My specialization is human rights law, and in this channel I talk about human rights and how to live more sustainable lives together with my partner Alan. Please follow if you want to know more. So in this video we're going to talk about blood donation based on sexual orientation. And when discussing this topic, which is extremely relevant in society, we need to first look at it from a historical perspective. Quoting the UPenn University, the previous restriction on accepting blood from men who have sex with men dates back to the early days of the HIV epidemic, when blood donations weren't able to be screened for HIV, leading to cases of transfusion-transmitted HIV. So this was a very specific context in which the technology available at the time was quite different from the technology we have today. This context has clearly changed. Should the rules regulating blood donation change as well? It's this topic that we're gonna analyze together today. So just for some historical examples, it was in 1985 that in the US, the FDA issued a lifetime ban for men having sexual relationships with other men to donate blood. This changed only in 2015 when a quarantine period of 1 year was instituted. Afterwards, this quarantine period was further reduced, and in 2023, this restriction based exclusively on sexual orientation was lifted. We can look at other jurisdictions as well. For example, in Colombia, in 1993, men who had had sexual relations with other men in the last 15 years could not donate blood. So if 15 years ago you had had relations with another man, or if you had had a relation with another man yesterday, the same, you could not donate blood. In Brazil, the restriction was also instituted, and only in 2004 it was flexibilized into a quarantine period of 1 year. In the UK, until 2011, there was also a lifetime ban on blood donation for men having sexual relations with other men. In 2011, however, the rules were changed to a quarantine of 1 year. In 2017, it was further reduced to 3 months. And in 2021, the restriction is no longer based on sexual orientation. Now, the rules is that if you had had the same partner in the last 3 months, you can donate blood. The analysis will then be on sexual behaviors, different partners, type of sex that is practiced, and not on your sexual orientation. And this change is not taking place only in these singular countries that I mentioned. It is a worldwide tendency. The Economist has a very interesting article that was published in June 2021, bringing forth a map of the world and differentiating by whether gay men or bisexual men could donate blood, if there was a deferral period, no deferral at all, or if there was a lifetime ban. There is also, if you're looking specifically at Europe, you can access the rainbow map that was prepared by the ILGA Europe, a rainbow organization that is co-founded by a series of agencies, including the European Union. And they have a very interesting analysis of all countries in Europe and their regulations with regard to blood donations, among other areas of equality based on sexual orientation and gender identity. So we're seeing a change with regards to blood donation regulations. And I would like to, in this video, discuss two reasonings of two courts that have analyzed restrictions on blood donation based on sexual orientation. And those two reasonings come from the Constitutional Court of Colombia and the Brazilian Supreme Federal Court. I'll start by the case of Colombia. At the time in which the Colombian Constitutional Court was writing its decision, it observed that countries such as Canada, Denmark, Germany, United States, among others, issued a lifetime ban for men having sex with other men to donate blood since approximately 1977. Different dates for different countries, but it was this in the general context. At that time, other countries such as Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Sweden, the UK, they established a quarantine period in which men had to wait 12 months if they had sex with other men to donate blood. And also countries such as Spain, Italy, and Poland did not, in contrast, mention the gender or sex of men as a criteria of men and their sexual partners as a criteria for selecting blood donors. So in the time of the decision of the Colombian Constitutional Court, this shift in the regulations concerning blood donation with regard to sexual orientation was still quite incipient. It was still starting. The court was quite transformative in a way, a pioneer. And the Colombian Constitutional Court noticed that the regulations that restricted blood donation based on sexual orientation, they stigmatize and were based on a stigma. They were also not adequate to identifying who could be infected by HIV because it is sexual behaviors and not sexual orientation that can lead to infection by HIV. The court also tackled the argument of the immunological window, that is, the period in which you could be infected by HIV, but tests would not be able to identify it, leading to more blank restrictions, such as the ones based on sexual orientation. And the court noticed that currently we have a technology that is highly effective, leading to extremely rare cases of false negative results. However, because of the risk of an immunological window that still exists to a certain degree in a certain period of time, the Colombian Constitutional Court said that a quarantine period could be established. It would be legal. It would not be a violation of equality. But such a quarantine period would not be based on your sexual orientation or the gender of your sexual partner. It would be based on a sexual behavior, for example, having sexual relations without protection. And this could take place either with homosexual partners or heterosexual couples. Finally, the Colombian Constitutional Court concluded that to apply a restriction only to same-sex couples, it introduces double standards. Heterosexual individuals are asked about their sexual history and the months before or even a year before the blood donation, while individuals with a different sexual orientation are asked about their sexual orientation, not only their sexual behavior. And it is not proportional in the strict sense, as it loses a significant amount of potential donors for something that is so important as blood donation in a context in which we already have a technology and questions that allow you to filter the risk of blood donation, of infection in blood donation, and to select blood donors not based on sexual orientation but based on behaviors. Going now to the decision of the Brazilian Federal Supreme Court. The Brazilian Federal Supreme Court decided this issue in 2020. The rapporteur in the case, his vote that was adopted by the majority, was Judge Fachin. And Fachin identified that it is discriminatory, a regulation on blood donation that identifies risk groups and not risk behaviors. And here I would like to quote him when he says, "One's sexual orientation contaminates no one. Risky conducts do." And I think this dialogue is very much of our last video on blood donation. Sexual orientation, one's sexual orientation, one's nationality contaminates no one. It is risky behaviors or having traveled to an area of risk that represents enhanced risk of contamination. It's not one's inherent nationality, it's not one's nationality or sexual orientation. Going forward, in this decision, The judge identified that such a restriction, that at time in Brazil, the restriction in question was a quarantine period of 1 year if a man had sex with another man in order to donate blood. That this prohibition was based on stereotypes, and in addition, it enforced this idea, this erroneous idea, that heterosexual individuals would be protected from STDs. Since there is a prohibition or a stricter regulation with regards to blood donation of men having sex with other men, it could generate a perception in society among heterosexual individuals that then they are under less risk of being contaminated by STDs, because if the risk was the same, why would the regulation not be the same as well? Judge Fachin concluded that such a restriction violates human dignity of individuals that are not allowed to donate blood simply because of their sexual orientation. In addition, it perpetuates a history of absence of recognition, of lack of recognition and equality. Judge Fachin says that substantive equality exists when morally important freedoms are made concrete. And this means making them concrete even in regulations, even in health regulations. But then let's analyze this health regulation specifically. It follows a constitutionally legitimate aim, which is the protection of public health. Yes, but Judge Fachin said, this restriction, it restricts a solidarity act based on prejudice and discrimination. As currently we have technology that allows to reduce the immunological window to 12 days. So not only, he concludes, the measure is not necessary, not proportional, as it restricts this act that is extremely important to society, which is blood donation, based on stereotypes and discrimination, but also is counterproductive as it reinforces an idea that heterosexual individuals don't need to be as careful as homosexual individuals or bisexual individuals when having sexual relations, and also don't really target what is a risk to public health. So it's a measure that although it has a constitutional objective, there's no link, there's no direct link between the objective and the restriction that is made. As this link would mean that the restriction would be looking at behaviors and not sexual orientation, which contaminates no one. Well, continue to follow us for more information about human rights and more discussions on sustainability and how to lead more sustainable lives for ourselves and our planet. Bye! See you next time. And don't forget to subscribe, comment,
and donate blood.
And donate blood.